Hi, welcome back to You Can Homeschool. I'm Tracy Hagerman, the happy homeschooler, and I'm here once again with Pat Fenner from Breakthrough Homeschooling. All right, I know I get ridiculous, but it's fun. So, today we're going to talk about the role of play in homeschooling, and that's what I was doing. I was playing because it's way more fun to have fun while you learn
Yeah.
than to be just all serious. I don't know. That's my take on it.
Of course it is, because you're the happy homeschooler, you know, so it has to be.
So, we've probably talked along this theme a few times, but we want to dedicate an episode to it because I think I know we all do this because we're used to traditional school, and traditional school is often sitting at a desk with a book. And I don't want to say that's all of it. I mean, teachers are amazing what
Right.
they do with the kids and that, but a lot of it is that. So I want to take us back to when our kids were young. Play was so important. What did we do? We had play groups that we'd go to. We'd say, "Oh, do you want to play a game?" We'd always be taking out the toys to play. When kids are young, we want to take them to the park to play. You hear play, 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 and then school. Sit in a chair with a book.
Mm.
So think about the things the kids learned when they were young. They learned to walk, they learned to talk, they learn to push the buttons on the TV when you don't want them to, or the buttons of their sibling. But what they're doing, they're exploring all the time. And homeschooling can be so great when you realize that most of us do better when we have play to learn. Even as adults, I remember going to a conference and sitting all day in a conference, and you can barely keep your eyes open.
Mhm.
And what's everyone doing? They're getting coffee. But if you're in an interactive conference where you're doing stuff in small groups, you're talking to others, you know, one time you're doing a little exercise for something, and it's we tend to retain the information better when there's change. So the whole point of this is we wanted to have an episode devoted to how do you take that play, that natural thing that children do, and keep that going as they homeschool so that they can learn through playing.
Because one of the biggest heartbreaking questions I get, I don't know if you get this, but people are often asking me, especially, new homeschoolers or with little kids, what's the best curriculum to use in kindergarten? I'm like, kindergarten? There, yes, of course, don't get me wrong. You can buy plenty of kindergarten curriculum, and you can spend a lot of money doing so. But honestly, I try to steer people away even from kindergarten, from curricula in kindergarten, because I just don't believe in it. I don't believe that transition should be as painful as Tracy describes it, which it often is, going from play to sit still.
Yeah. And like you said, when I was first starting to teach, I wanted a curriculum, right? But I said, okay, what do they need to know in kindergarten? And I found out here in Canada, they needed to know their numbers. I think it was 1 to 20. Maybe it was 1 to 10. I don't even remember. They needed to be able to recognize the alphabet,
Mhm.
and they needed to start identifying a few basic words, and that was it. And I was like, okay, then we're good. We can do anything. We can play and learn. So we're going to give some ideas, and I wanted to start with talking about when children are young. So if you're starting to homeschool and you have kindergarten, grade 1, grade 2, grade 6, whatever, one of the most important things they need to do is be active because you're helping them develop their gross motor skills. So, what can you do in your homeschooling day that allows them to exercise those muscles?
Mhm.
And when our children were young, we would spend like almost a whole day outside, to be honest, and we go to different parks and that. So, when they're young, You go to the park and you basically say, okay, let's count how many steps there are up to the slide.
Mm-hmm.
So they're playing and you're just adding little things. Let's sing the alphabet as we walk to the park. Okay, so you don't have to be, I encourage you, anything you can do to get them moving and out and about, they'll naturally do it. And then every time you walk into the park, they'll naturally be reciting their alphabet. And what you know, lo and behold, they know their alphabet. So it's really important to keep that play
Mm-hmm. And
as
the
you're
best,
homeschooling.
and the best, a really good way to make breaks productive, because even though kids have what it seems like endless bounds of energy, if you're at a park, if you're out all day, even if you're just out in the yard, you'll have periodic break times. Grab some books from the library that are educational, interesting, colorful, that catch their attention, and use them to look through while you're sitting and resting. And this way they kind of start to associate books still with that having fun, playing, being outside, uh, learning through absorption, kind of concept. And you're not making books sound like a punishment. There's something that, hey, let's take a break for a few minutes. Let's sit down. I know you've been really active. Let's have some juice and read a book. Or have a snack and read a book on the blanket here and do that.
Love it. Love it. And I know when I was young, I loved comic books. I
Mm-hmm.
just loved them. And then you read and read and read. So if your child likes comic books, that's okay. To be honest with you, it's better than a lot of the readers that are out there that they're trying to say, oh, these are grade one words and you need to learn these words. There, a lot of those readers, ugh, I think it's way better to just go get some interesting books at the library and it'll have different levels of vocabulary in the book and they'll just learn. So yeah, I'm not a huge proponent of those readers at all.
I,
Actually, we just kind of put those to the side.
I know. I think, was it Charlotte Mason that used to call that twaddle, or twaddle, or twaddle? I don't remember, but I love that word. It's just great. But that's what she considered readers were, just a waste of time. Just you know, which I agree with.
Because the goal of them was here's the precise words rather than what's the story? What's the story about? What's the excitement of this story? So,
One of the good things about comic books, and of course you want to watch the content, but they are very storyline based. There is an arc because the art, has to carry it. It has to carry the storyline. But my son got really interested in illustrating it for a while there because he liked he liked comic books as well. And we discovered during that time that you can really find a whole bunch of Bible stories and even like elementary age Bible studies that use the comic book format. And so you can really do whatever with comic books. It's amazing what's out there.
awesome.
Yeah.
Now, also, when kids are young, what is their favorite thing to play with that helps with fine motor skills?
Mm.
It's Play-Doh.
Gosh,
And
yes.
I mean, when you first, you can do it in the oven. There's different ways to do it, but regardless how you do it, it usually comes out warm, right?
Mm.
And I'm telling you, I love to just squeeze that stuff, stuff as much as the kids do. There's something soothing about it. But you can take that through. We had a co-op, and one of the teen classes, the mom was teaching them to do art with clay. And so they did dioramas, three-dimensional dioramas of scenes. So some of them were like, scene from history or, maybe from ancient Egypt or something. They had something going. And the kids so got into that with modeling the clay and then also all the different colors. So they'd have these little people they made. And at the end of, I think it was 8 or 10 weeks, they had all of them on display. And everybody in the co-op was hovered around this table because what they had come up with was incredible.
Oh my gosh, I
So
used to love doing dioramas, and the kids love that too. We did something. I think we were doing ancient Egypt at one point, and did a unit study on that. And I remember all day the kids and I were around the table working on a diorama, and we just totally lost track of time. And before I knew it, my husband came home, And and I was like, what? I thought something was wrong. I was like, what's wrong? Why are you home? And I looked at my watch. I was like, oh, it's time to, like, it's the end of the day. Oh, kids, we got to get dinner. Like, it was crazy, but it just sucked you in working on that.
Yeah. So, and again, that it, instead of them just sitting reading a book,
Mm-hmm.
they hands-on play. How they're going to retain that? They're going to be building. Okay, well, what did the swords look like in that time, or what kind of coins did they have, or what were the people dressed in? So they're going to retain that information. And I know one of my daughters, she has a business degree, but most of her electives, she was taking classic studies because she loved learning history. And she can tell you all kinds of things. And she'll tell me something like, where'd you learn that? She goes, well, you taught me that, Mom. And I'm like, I don't remember that. But she remembers it because she was the one building the costume, writing the play about it, like really involved. So again, we want to bring those natural things that kids do young all the way through homeschooling.
Mm-hmm.
So, what's another thing you can do? Okay, so I had a couple kids that spelling was a nightmare. Like, this was just not fun. So, on Fridays, I would say, okay, instead of the spelling, we're going to play a game. So, that's where Scrabble came in. So, we played, especially my youngest daughter, we played Scrabble almost every Friday. And for her, it was like, oh, I don't have to write a list, I don't have to do a dictation or whatever. We could sit and play a game. And usually, when we were first starting, all her tiles would be visible to me as well because she had trouble with the spelling. So it was like, okay, let's look at some of the patterns in the title. What are words that you always see that are ER? Okay, so put the ER, and what can you add to that? So it was kind of, using a game
Mm-hmm.
to be able to help her with their spelling. Now, I'll be honest with you, she won't play Scrabble with me today because she sees it as school. But at the time, she was like, yeah, we get to play a game rather than sit with a list. And she's a much better speller for it. So, Scrabble, another one that's really good for the spelling is something called bananagrams.
Yes, we
Um,
love that too.
it's tiles as well, and basically you're making almost like creating a crossword puzzle, and something you can also do solo. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a great way to learn spelling through a game.
Hmm. And for when you're traveling, you can look at word search books. We used to do a lot of traveling. There was a point of time when we did that, and we would have word search books. You can get them on, based on themes or age ranges, or, there's a whole bunch of them. You can find a bunch of them in Amazon, and those are good because they're something that the kids can do in the car. Not a big mess. It's just something easy to we used to put in our traveling bag. I had a traveling bag of specific toys that we only had when we were traveling, and that was one of them.
Yeah, yeah, it's helpful.
Hmm.
Another thing that used to be really popular, and you can get so many versions of now, are the Rubik's Cube.
Hmm.
Now, I'll be honest, this isn't for everyone. Some kids absolutely love those types of things, and some don't. I loved those when I was a kid, the Rubik's Cube. And you have to think about it like it takes patience to do that. It's spatial reasoning. They're dealing with 3D. And again, you'll see some now, there's some that are in the form of pyramids, there's some that are 7 wide. And it's kind of interesting because also in YouTube, you can see some where they've, how do they call it? They've programmed computers to solve the Rubik's Cube with like a robot.
Oh my
Those
God.
are pretty fascinating to watch. But again, this is a simple thing that came out years ago, but is really good for learning. And that's another thing if you have a child that's really fidgety.
Hmm.
So a Rubik's Cube can help with that. They can just sort of be playing with it while they're listening to an audiobook or that. So again, as much as you can incorporate play, I think you'll find less frustration in your kids when it's school time.
Hmm. Another thing you mentioned about the Rubik's cubes, if people are fidgety, those fidget spinners are really great. We had a friend of ours. I had a friend of ours whose daughter just could not, bless her heart, could not sit still. She loved being read to them. They did a lot of read alouds, but she just couldn't sit still. So she would have to sit upside down on the couch, and drawing. She would sketch. Just different things. She's a beautiful artist now, but when she was little, she would just do little sketches, and that was, of course, we didn't have fidget spinners and stuff at the time, but she always had to have her hands moving, and she was able to. She had a great attention span if she was, occupying her hands, and sometimes that's a lot. Of what we need to teach our kids. It's not bad to be fidgety. There's energy in you. God has given you energy and stuff, but uh, how can you focus it, or how can you navigate it, while you're listening?
Yeah. I also, my daughter would have trouble concentrating, and she's really good at math, but to sit down and work through a whole math sheet, math takes time. The best thing that worked for her is sitting on one of those large exercise balls. So
Mm-hmm.
instead of a chair at her desk, she sat, and I mean, sometimes it could be a little messy, but she was learning, and she felt, she could still move around and have a little fun, so that worked for her. And that was something someone had given it to us, and then I came in her room one day and she had this ball, and I'm like, you're supposed to be doing your math, and she's like, I am, like, and it's like, oh, okay, it's getting done, like, great. So again,
That's supposed to be
helping to,
very good for your posture too, sitting on those balls.
yeah, yeah. Another thing that's a great idea is, one of the things we want our kids to learn is how to communicate well and how to write well. But, sometimes we're like, okay, go write an essay on this. Well, another thing that we would do is sometimes, yes, you have to write an essay, and you'll need that for university if you're going on to college or university. But a lot of times you can take your kids together and say, why don't the three of you, we had three, why don't you go make a play about this? And so they love that because they could come up with the names. And as one is coming up with what this character is going to say, the other one's writing it. The other one's, rummaging through the closet for what costumes they can use. So all of a sudden, this thing that seems so huge became a fun thing that they could work on together. And so when they would do this together, I'd usually say, okay, you can have, half an hour a day for the next 10 days to work on this. And, after the half an hour was up, and maybe after dinner, they'd be right back at it because they were having so much fun with the activity. And the writing got done, and then I would have each of them, okay, you need to have your version. So when they didn't necessarily have to memorize anything, but they would put it on the play for us, and they'd each have their words written out. And so again, the writing got done, they learned, but again, through a fun way of doing it.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, that's terrific. That's yeah. And that keeps it light, keeps the learning light. It's not like dry. My poor daughter, she's senior in high school right now, and she's doing American history, just for the credit to have it for college. But it's just the boring names and dates and memorizing, and it's just so dry. But she's doing dual enrollment, so she's getting college credit for it. So you kind of got to let it go.
Yeah.
Uh, but that would be a shame to have to subject younger kids to. She's already been through a lot of uh, interesting and engaging homeschool activities. So I think she's okay with knowing that learning doesn't have to be painful. But to do that with a younger kid seems almost criminal.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Hmm.
One of the other things that we did too, and the kids were, I think my youngest was about 10, so my other daughter would have been 13, and my son would have been 15. They created their own board games.
Hmm.
Each of them had their own board games, and so that was something that went on for quite a while, and we still have them. We they made little boxes for them as well, and they labeled the box and everything to make it look like a board game. And that was really fun because, at first it was like, we're going to make a board game. How do we do that? But then
Yeah.
it was like, okay, let's think about it. What do board games have? So, okay, some have dice, some have cards. There's usually a board or not. There's place markers. Some of them are colored, just different colors. Some of them are like in Monopoly. They're all different little, there's a shoe, and I can't even remember what there's
Yeah.
an iron, and the most bizarre things. And then there's strategy and that. So, that was something they loved because they've always loved games, but to create their own game and then to have their friends over and to play a board game that they had made. So we still have their games that they had created. And I mean, they're in their 20s now. So, but again, that's another way. And what are they learning in that? They're learning math skills, they're learning design skills, they're learning creative thinking skills. All of these things add up over time. So, when they're, older and all of a sudden they're handed a project at work, like, okay, we want you to develop this app for this phone. They go back, okay, well, what do other apps have? What things work well? What buttons do we want to use on the phone? What shortcuts do it all adds up. So again, anything that you can do, I have said this over and over through this episode, anything that you can do to incorporate play, it's a natural way that we all learn. So I don't know if you have any other ideas at
Well,
this.
we did similar some things similar to what you were doing, but I always tried to incorporate some kind of play aspect, because I that's what we enjoyed about homeschooling, that not only could our kids incorporate their own interests and abilities and everything, but we could learn in ways that were natural to us and in ways that we enjoyed. And so we, no matter what we were uh, studying, we always tried to put our own spin on it, and it really did become, as the kids got older, became a game in and of itself. So it doesn't have to end when your kids get older, or it doesn't even have to end when your kids are little. Like, don't rush the curriculum, don't rush getting into books, because we're releasing this around Christmas time. Tracy and I put together a little Amazon gift list for some games that you could use for, well, for older kids in like middle school. We're going to be talking about teens in another episode, but let them equate, for as long as you can, let them equate learning with fun. It will make all the difference to your homeschool. And if you've pulled your kids out of traditional school and are starting homeschooling them, start introducing that concept. It's going to feel really strange to them because they're like, well, my teacher never did that. But your teacher had 30 kids in the classroom. We just have us. Let's make it fun. It's definitely time well worth being spent on that.
Yeah, and you'll find that their attitudes are better and your attitude is better because you're not every day waking up to the drudgery. The kids don't want to sit down. And you'll find the more you do this and the more you naturally incorporate play, the attitudes are better. So you're having a better time. Yeah.
And for those of you moms who like a little more validation than just what us two homeschool moms could say, I pulled together a curated book list. There's only about a handful of books on it, on incorporating play and the value of it in education and learning. So they, take a look at the peek inside feature in Amazon, see if one or two of them speak to you. But definitely this is something we talk about from time to time, professional development over time as a homeschool parent. And this is definitely something that, especially if you're new to homeschooling, that you may want to learn more about this concept and become a little more uh, educated towards how to incorporate this with your kids in your own homeschool.
Yeah. So I think that's all we have for you today. So remember, you can homeschool and it can be truly awesome.
There you
Enjoy
go.
your week.
Okay, bye bye, everybody.